Welcome back guys! Today we're diving into one of the most iconic heavy tank the Soviets ever fielded in World War II, the IS-2 1944 version. This is the version of the IS series that most people think of when they hear about Soviet heavies tearing through German lines. Sitting at 6.7 in Warthunder, this thing is a monster, and if you play it right, it lives up to its nickname, the King Tiger Killer. Because let's be honest, when you see that King Tiger rolling down the street, most tanks panic, but not the IS-2. This beast was built to deal with them, and in Warthunder, it still has the tools to do exactly that. Today, we're gonna break down the history, the stats, the playstyle, and of course, whether the Soviet legend still has what it takes to dominate the battlefield. Before we dive into gameplay, let's set the stage. The IS-2 was part of the Joseph Stalin heavy tank line, designed as a direct evolution of the KV series. The Soviets had been experimenting with heavy tanks since the start of the war, but the KV-1 and KV-2 were starting to show their age by 1942. German weapons were catching up, and the Red Army needed something with more firepower and armor. The first IS-2 rolled out in 1943 armed with the massive 122mm gun, the D-25T, but by 1944 it was clear that improvements were needed. German tanks like the Panthers and Tiger I, and especially the newly arrived Tiger II or King Tiger, were pushing armor technology further. So the Soviets introduced the IS-2 1944. A refined version with the new straightened glacis plate for improved frontal protection, along with other production tweaks that made it a much tougher nut to crack. This was the tank that rolled through Eastern Europe and smashed its way into Berlin. Historically, it was the Soviet answer to the German big cats. And in Warthunder, it's still very much a tank that can stand toe-to-toe with them. So, what do you actually get when you spawn into an IS-2 in Warthunder? First, the BR. It's 6.7, right in the sweet spot where you'll be facing King Tigers, Panthers, late Shermans, and early Cold War vehicles. The armor? The big change from the 1943 model is the angled 100mm front plate, which is much more effective at bouncing shots, especially against the infamous German 88, but the mantlet is still a weak spot, and that huge lower glacis. Gun, the legendary 122mm D25T. This is where the magic happens. It's a high caliber, hard hitting gun with insane post-pen damage. If you hit a Tiger II in the right spot, it's lights out. Mobility, not bad for a heavy tank, but isn't lightning fast. It's enough to keep up with the push. So right out of the gate, you can see this tank is extreme. Huge gun, great armor or decent armor, but you only need to watch out for the reload. Really need to talk more about the gun because this is what makes the IS-2 iconic. The 122mm is one of those weapons where if you pen the enemy, the fight is over. Against German heavy tanks like the Tiger II-H or Tiger II-P, you can go straight through the lower glacis or aim for the usual weak spot, the turret shakes. With the massive explosive feeder, you'll usually wipe out half the crew or even detonate the ammo. Same story against the Jagd Tiger. If you catch it from the side or front hull MG weak spot, usually one shot and it's done. It applies with the Ferdinand or the Elephant, the usual big boys of the German 6.7. Now, it's not German tanks that suffer. American heavies like the T-29, T-34, or Super Pershings might look scary with their thick turrets, but if you hit them in the right spots, the IS-2 should have no problem sending them back to hangar. As for the British, they've got good guns, but the armor isn't enough to stop a 122mm Soviet steel. Well, except if you see a tortoise. The flip side is the reload. As I mentioned, at over 20 plus seconds stock and a bit faster with an ace crew, you can't afford to miss. This tank punishes bad aim harder than almost anything else at 6.7. But the reward, that's one of the most satisfying one-shot experiences in Warthunder. Now let's talk protection. The IS-2 1944 has 100mm of angled frontal armor, which is surprisingly effective against German 88s at long range. You can sometimes shrug off hits, but don't get cocky. The 128mm of the Yag Tiger, or yeah, the usual 88s, can and will pen you regardless if they aim correctly. The turret is a mixed bag. It's kinda thick, but the mantlet is a clear weak spot. And everybody shoots you there. So expect Panthers and Americans to go straight for it if you expose too much. Situational awareness is key. Once you're surrounded, that long reload means you won't be able to fight off multiple enemies at once. Survivability also comes from crew layout. With only 4 crew members, a penetrating hit can end your game instantly. You've got to play cautiously and use that armor smartly. So how does the IS-2 stack up against its main opponents? First, let's start with the Germans. The usual enemy you'll face is the Tiger 2, H or P variant. This is the matchup everyone talks about. The King Tiger is deadly, but the IS-2 can take it out in one clean shot. Again, turret cheeks. The trick is to get the first hit, or if they're reloading, since they have much faster reload than you. As for the American heavies, you'll get the T-29, T-34, Super Pershings. The IS-2 can punch through them easily, but watch out for the armor. There are some spots on the tank which is pretty tricky that it might bounce or ricochet. I know you guys got what I mean, but again, it still won't be a problem. Just be mindful of that. As for the early Cold War vehicles, this is where things get tricky. You might see or absolutely get up tier to 7.0, 7.3 or 7.7 max. Tanks that have hit FS rounds. Against those, you've got to play cautiously, using cover and ambush tactics because you would absolutely get wrecked. Just imagine you're fighting an M103, and now that's a tricky opponent. Overall, the IS-2 1944 is still extremely dangerous. It might not be the fastest or most forgiving, but if you know your weak spots, you can level the playing field against anything. So, how do you actually play the IS-2 1944? First, sniping or long-range engagements. You have the punch to deal with enemies at distance. Use your armor and range to trade shots carefully. Just don't spam, or you need to clearly pick your targets since every shots need to count. Number 2, ambush or defensive. Set up at choke points or hold angles. This is where you shine. Enemies peek, you shoot, and they disappear. And lastly, urban brawls. Risky but super rewarding. Your gun is perfect for blasting enemies in tight spaces, but your reload means you can't handle more than one at a time. Take your shot, retreat into cover, and reload. And this is absolutely my playstyle for this. But as usual, the main key is patience. Don't rush, don't overexpose, and don't forget how long that reload is. Make the first shot count and you'll dominate. So, is the IS-2 1944 truly a King Tiger killer? In my opinion, yes. In both history and Warthunder, it was designed specifically to counter Germany's heavy tanks, and it does the job beautifully. Sure, it's got flaws, the reload, the usual lower glacis weak spot, but the firepower and the raw presence it brings to the battlefield makes it one of the most satisfying tanks to play at 6-7. If you've got the patience to work around its limitations, the IS-2 rewards you with some of the most devastating one-shots in the game. And let's be real, few things are more satisfying than sending a King Tiger back to the hangar with a single round. So yeah, if you haven't given it a try yet, take it out for a spin. Master the reload, know your weak spots, and embrace the role of the King Tiger killer. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and again, see you in the next one.